that who Republicans decide to elevate into a leadership position says a lot about what the conference's priorities and values are. And I mean, ultimately, Mr. Scalise reportedly described himself as David Duke without the baggage. So it'll be up to Republicans to decide what that says about their conference.
And joining us now from New Orleans is David Duke, former state rep there and former Ku Klux Klan member. First of all, I understand you were not at the conference where Congressman Scalise spoke. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, actually, at the time, I was in Moscow. In fact, I was in the Russian archives during that period doing research for this book, The Secret Behind Communism, which is about the origins of communism. And by the way, my speech at the conference, which was done by a telephone hookup, was actually about how the Iraq War would be a catastrophic war for America and only help the enemies of America and put Americans in harm's way for a lie, because I said there were no weapons of mass destruction. That was it about. I was never a white supremacist. I'm not a white supremacist at all. In fact, the European American Unity and Rights Group was, in fact, a chartered civil rights organization. And I, in fact, in the Louisiana legislature, sponsored a bill that forbid racial discrimination in these programs called affirmative action, which are racial discrimination.
Let's get back to the Congressman Scalise, because he's in the eye of the tiger right now.
Right, sure.
All right, so you weren't there. You were in Moscow doing something else. Were you aware that he was going to speak to your group?
I heard about that, but yeah, I tell you, frankly, I know your next question is, was he there? And I can't be sure he was there.
So you don't know whether he actually showed up, because the New Orleans Picayune newspaper is saying, yeah, he spoke, but it wasn't to your group, it was to another group at the same hotel, and blah, 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 blah.
Well, I know he was scheduled to speak, but I don't know if he spoke. But, well, here's the deal. I was out of the Klan at this time longer than Robert Byrd was out of the Klan when he went to the United States Congress. Robert Byrd was a former Klansman, and by the way, in fact, he was in it for years after I was. I was in my 20s, and I've always condemned violence. And here's President, and you can zoom in on it if you want. Here's President Obama, you know, with Robert Byrd. When he died, he was there. Clinton was there, all praising Robert Byrd as a great man.
But he repudiated his past, and I mean, you're still the head of the European, whatever group it is. No. When you defend the rights of all Americans, you're... Wait, that's
not
racism.
racism.
Just the label of the group, you're sending a message. The European Union.
Oh, it's the same message.
I know you... Look, I've known you for a long time.
You're not even letting me answer.
We don't have enough time for you to answer and give your philosophy.
Of course you don't. Of course you... No.
The thing is about Scalise. Look, but don't sit there and tell me you're not a white. Your organization isn't looking out for the white European race. That's what you're looking out for.
I tell you what, I'm looking out for the rights of all Americans. I also believe that European Americans shouldn't be discriminated against in jobs or scholarships or any other way.
Yeah, all right, and that's a position that's being debated all over the place.
There's nothing wrong with that. And so if Scalise was there, he wasn't at a Klan meeting. And look at the hypocrisy. Here's a perfect example. Here's Nelson Mandela, right? This is a picture of Nelson Mandela at a Communist Party meeting. He was a member of the Central Committee.
I reported that.
Exactly. But let me ask you the question. Does any of the mass media in this country...
Care? You don't care about the mass media? You know they despise you.
No, I sure don't care about them, because they're enemies of all people in America, European Americans, African Americans. Look, he was a communist. They never headlined former communist Nelson Mandela.
That's because they're sympathetic in the mainstream media for the left.
Exactly.
And
they're unsympathetic to European Americans.
Don't sit here and tell me that you're not trying to promote the cause of white people, because you are.
Look, I am absolutely... I love my people, my heritage. I want to preserve my heritage like every people does.
Preserve your heritage? What does that mean?
How about European heritage?
What does that mean?
Look, I'll tell you what, you don't know what European heritage is? You don't know what Mozart is and Bach and Beethoven? You don't know...
They're people. They come from different countries.
Let me tell you.
The problem with this garbage on both sides
is that
we're all in it together, and skin color shouldn't matter.
You know what? The people who run the media, they're inflaming the African Americans against European Americans, and they're inflaming a sector of European Americans and African Americans. But the truth is, the real people who are repressing and hurting all of us are the big bankers, which are robbing us blind, like the Goldman Sachs of the world. They're putting us in these wars for Israel. That's who's hurting all of America.
Mr. Duke, I gotta go, but we appreciate you coming in. But the one thing that you said, I want to get everybody on board with this, is that Congressman Scalise was scheduled.
Did not go to a white supremacist meeting if he went at all.
All right, I'm not going to say white supremacist, but he was scheduled to speak to your group. And that's all we want is the truth. Plenty more ahead.